For 3.6, 9, and 13, for each of these, you're going to find f plus g of negative 1, f minus g of negative 1, f times g of negative 1, and f divided by g of negative 1. And in the first case, for 9, they give us what f would be and what g would be. So what we're really after is for our f plus g of negative 1, we want our f of negative 1 and our g of negative 1. And we're going to need that for all these. So let's just go ahead and find what is our f of negative 1. That'd be this one here. So whenever x is negative 1, it produces a 3. And for our g of negative 1, that'd be this right here. So I also get a 3. So our f plus g of negative 1 is going to be 3 plus 3. It's a little sloppy there. Oops. Don't know how I got to erase mode, but okay. 3 plus 3, and that gives me 6. For f minus g of negative 1, that's f of negative 1 minus g of negative 1. So that's 3 minus 3, which is 0. For f times g of negative 1, it's going to be f of negative 1 times g of negative 1, which is going to be 3 times 3, which is 9. And f divided by g of negative 1 is f of negative 1 divided by g of negative 1, which is 3 divided by 3, which is 1. Now in the second case, we have 13. So the same thing we need for each of these. We need to find our f of negative 1 and f of negative 1. I don't see which one's which one's f and which one's g. Well, let me see. So here's our negative 1. And that's going to be correspond to here, which is a 4. So that might be the 4. And then our g of negative 1 would be down here, negative 1. I need to go check the book to see which one's which here. So let's just do that real quick.
By time. That's going to be okay. Are they by categories, like venues, like westerns? Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that just confirmed that with the book, that f is the purple one. So we look at our f plus g of negative 1. That's our f of negative 1 plus g of negative 1, which is going to be 4 plus negative 1, which is 3. F minus g of negative 1 is f of negative 1 minus g of negative 1, which is 4 minus negative 1, which gives us 5. F times g of negative 1 is f of negative 1 times g of negative 1, which is 4 times negative 1, which is negative 4. And f divided by g of negative 1 is f of negative 1 divided by g of negative 1, which is 4 divided by negative 1, which is negative 4. So I hope that helps.